Yeah, hey, super happy to join you, and it's exciting to squeeze in a quick conversation. I think all that you're doing and all this content has been phenomenal, so really appreciate it. I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Truist has declared it will headquarter, our new bank, which is the largest merger since the last great economic downturn we had, and I just have a couple slides to take us through a backgrounder of that. And one of the things to point out is BB&T and SunTrust. These are brands that in the Southeast are pretty well known. And if you catch someone on the street and ask them, what they think about it, they're not going to talk about how flashy, or advanced it is, but they are going to describe that these are brands that they trust. And so, a human touch has been paramount to the history of both of these banks. And as we take things forward, we're really focused on bringing forward the human touch, but also adding in a big piece of the technology that's necessary for any bank to survive. As we press forward, and so it's my pleasure and my honor to join the team late last year to lead innovation in a role where I think the company has wisely pulled together experience design and ventures and some key pieces that are great drivers of how modern companies and modern financial services firms innovate. And really a big piece of the merger, which we call the MOE, or merger of equals, has been to focus on the ability to innovate at scale. So also feeds into just how honored I am to be a part of this whole effort. And happy to share a little bit of the story today with you. And we've been very, very busy on the COVID front. So Dan and I hopefully will get into that a bit too. But if you want to go ahead to the slide that is our purpose, mission, and values, I do think it's a reasonable point to make that financial services is so emotional. It's so at the heart of what America thinks and feels. But our company Truist has chosen to have a mission that is actually even one level above financial health and financial livelihood, and it's really something we're proud of because we focus on community and frankly improving lives, and we take it very seriously. And so having that at the root of our culture drives every decision every teammate makes, and every discussion that we have with our clients. And in times where COVID hits and we're making decisions every day, or in times where more recently we have even another crisis on our hands for America, it's great knowing that a deep-seated culture and knowing who we are and knowing we're here to improve lives is a big part of our core and helps us make decisions. If you want to go next to really the last intro slide, it's our pleasure to have some scale now that we bring these two banks together. So if you're viewing this from another part of the country, we are now on the scene as the fifth or sixth largest financial services firm in the U.S. And to us, that means we have challenger scale. And certainly we admire the leadership position that the top four have. And there's a lot of things that those banks are doing that is great for customers and great for our economy. But we also love the position of being a challenger, and really being able to look at what can we do to bring our heritage of human touch forward, and match it with technology at scale to better serve clients, and also to redefine the role of a financial services firm moving forward. So I don't know if it surprises anyone, but in our footprint, which is the Southeast, we have the number 2 weighted average deposit rank. So locally, both of these regionals had a lot of scale, and now together, number 2 really says something. Also, very interested in small business banking and commercial banking, and it typically is part of our model in any community to be able to serve local businesses as well as the leaders of those businesses at the same time. And finally, from a scale perspective, 58,000 teammates certainly pales in contrast to some of America's largest companies, but that's a lot of teammates that we care about. That's a lot of teammates that are on our front lines, through times like this, serving clients and really putting forth our values. So a really big deal.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing a little bit of that background. I think fascinating when you talk about 58,000 people still being in the challenger status.
Yeah, right.
How large financial services has gotten. And let me just ask you one follow-up question to that. That was
Sure.
fascinating. You joined the team, gosh, I think less than a year ago, right? Or about a year
Yeah.
ago?
Yep, late
And
last
so,
year. That's right.
and so you came together as those two organizations were forming culture and some new people added to the mix. Just talk for
I
a second
did.
about your experience. You talked about the passion of the mission and the values of the organization. What's been your experience over the last year living through that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, I've seen some pretty big scale. So I most recently was chief experience officer at Verizon, and a great place, and massive scale, even bigger scale, than B of A or Chase. And so, part of what I love about my experience, since joining the Truist team is really one of the first Truist types of hires. I joined knowing that the role would be across, both parts of the merger of equals, and I think it's great to be at a place that still is small enough to know who it is, and still is small enough to have regular interactions where the leaders set the tone for how every teammate interacts with frontline clients. And so I've really enjoyed that. It's almost earliest in my career. I had the honor of working with the Walt Disney Company, and it's when you're in a culture that really knows who it is, and when you see every teammate kind of wear that honor when they're interacting with folks, and or when they're building services or technology or user interfaces. It changes the way you come to work every day. So that's been pretty exciting. I would also say, from an innovation perspective, there's just so much excitement as far as what we're about to do. So we're pretty proud of where BB&T was, and actually, most recently winning some awards on the mobile banking front. And SunTrust certainly had a pretty bold public persona and brand, and had done a lot of great things on the technology front as well. But really doubling down on that, and then in my role leading innovation, really helping architect what will the combined focus be. How will we partner with the community? How will we consider investing in fintechs or acquiring fintechs? What kind of accelerator plans do we have? Those are all the things that we've been doing our best to focus on, over the last 6 months, as we've also dealt with the other things that every one of us has seen come through.
Yeah, I'm just realizing hearing you talk about that too. Good branding that was unintentional with a nice city skyline shot we have of Charlotte. I think that's Truist Tower, newly named Truist Tower.
Yeah,
Looking
right,
at your shoulder.
right by my ear there.
That's
Yeah,
right, which is
yeah, that's
great.
right. Yeah, newly,
Well,
yeah, Truist Tower and Truist Center. So it's exciting for the Charlotte region that it's a company that's absolutely headquartered here, and another great step for Charlotte. So we're excited about that.
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about COVID and your response, because you talked about the fact that
Yeah.
you were kind of right in the thick of it. And I think we actually have a slide we'll pull up here in a second. But talk to us a little bit about COVID, your response, your role, and all that, and how the bank reacted.
Yeah, we knew we had to react with speed, and we knew to do that we'd have to ask people to step out of their BAU roles and put a different hat on. And we immediately stood up a couple of enterprise-wide functions, and I was at the helm of one of those, which was focused on our client experience and digital frontier. And we met every day. We went straight into kind of agile practices. We had a stand up so that all the teams could talk about what we were doing and how we were affecting different parts of the client experience, and ensuring that that would be linked across the spectrum. And then major initiatives started, and they just kept coming. The very first thing we did was launch a website, or an addition to our Truist.com website, which was a COVID response, kind of specialist page, if you will. We did that immediately, and we were proud to do it immediately, because that ended up being the place where our clients and business partners went to look for the latest developments. And the very next thing we did, which was still very early on in the COVID crisis, really the first weekend, was we launched Truist Cares. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. But the leadership team boldly put together a plan to assemble $25 million to be able to put forth to Truist Cares, to those who need it in the crisis, and to help the communities we serve. So, and then after that, boy, the things just kept coming. I think we've all read in the news, and any of us at banks are well aware of PPP and what that meant to banks. We serve so many small businesses, we had to take it very seriously. That knowing the volume that we would have to serve, we had to immediately stand up, a digital front door, so that our clients could submit their information and we could serve them as fast as possible. And along the way, it wasn't just a matter of building the APIs and other things that made that fast, effective process. It ended up really being a situation where we had to focus on client communications, because The government would promise one thing and banks would scramble to do their best, to fulfill on those promises. And then the client, or customers across America were kind of wondering, where their applications were and where they were in the process. So we at Truist, doubled down and built a couple of teams that obsessed on that and researched and talked to clients so that we could understand how often do we need to communicate, how can we over communicate, and a lot of that is based on good data. So we had to build a special temporary data team to help that effort as well. But that kept expanding into other things, and I can share some other stories too. But if you have a question, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's fascinating. A lot of people understand the challenge and the stress that were put on all the banking system. But I think Truist's approach, and it's Stephen, how you labeled your slide and how you talked about it, right? The human impact of it, the communication impact is as big as the technology challenges were of taking. I don't think that amount of money
Yeah.
has ever been moved in the marketplace that quickly in American history, right? So outside of just that monumental task, but not losing sight of the human aspect of that, the client aspect of that, I think goes back to, you started with the core values and the company. It shows that in action, right? Words are cheap. What do you do as a firm and a bank when the chips are on the line? That
Yeah.
also might lead us to that point, because I know we want to talk a little bit about Truist Cares, and
Yeah.
you mentioned it for a hot second there, but the transition into we're not just a bank, we're also a leader in the community. Talk about Truist Cares and what you all did there.
Yeah, well, it started with just assembling leaders at Truist who were purpose driven and saying, "Hey, how do we make a difference in this moment? How do we look within ourselves and make sure that we're reaching out to do something that affects the community?" And so we were very proud to boldly announce $25 million early on, and a series of different pillars where that went, that kind of guided our investments around connecting those communities that are disadvantaged to the technology and services that they need to be able to get to the internet if everyone is isolated. We had a focus on Truist for Youth, which is how do we help the youth and reconnect them to the education that they're missing if schools are closed. We also focus on seniors, as you'd imagine, and a lot of things there as far as food services and medical supplies. Small businesses, of course, there's a number of things we could do for small businesses on the financial support, technical assistance frontier, and even for our own workforce and for other workforces. We are a sponsor of several stadiums, including the Atlanta Braves Stadium, and we quickly realized that there are a number of affected workforces that rely on paychecks that all of a sudden don't have them. And so we looked into ways we could use that money to help communities far and wide within our footprint, but beyond. And then more recently, as this stretched out and as we continue to hear and see there are communities in need, we recently in May announced that we were doubling our effort. So we went from 25 to 50 million. And this was a chance for us to kind of circle back on any of the gaps and opportunities that we saw from where the first $25 million went. Really lean in on the connect piece, because I think, as we all know, together in this virtual group today, connecting is different from here forward, right? We have a new normal. We may still connect in person someday. I hope we do, but connecting virtually is going to be a big deal. And companies with scale can help communities, and so we wanted to step forward and be able to do that. And then back and finally to community development. So at least $10 million of the most recent $25 million announcement will go to fund community development in the Southeast region, especially, but not limited to that. And our ears are wide open, and we continue to interact and make decisions on the best way to leverage this purposeful money to help the communities and clients we serve.
Yeah, but it's terrific. And part of the reason we wanted to have you come and talk a little bit about it, I think Truist has just done a phenomenal job about how a financial institution of scale can react. And part of that may have been because you were already trying to be a little more nimble as you're bringing organizations together, and the ability to react to that. But I think you all have done a fantastic job. I know we're proud to have you as the newest hometown team here in Charlotte, but I think even across the country, right? That challenger status you talked about. But it'll be great in that sense of innovation, and that can be bringing in events like Fintech Generations. Hopefully next year we will have everyone back together in one place. But if we can't, I think for the next little bit we're going to have to be smart about how we move our businesses forward and how we collaborate.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time. What kind of parting thought would you have for folks about Truist and where Truist is heading? Anything else we didn't touch on that you wanna make sure this group of folks knows about the organization and where you all are heading?
I would just say, we're very interested in understanding how technology can help us better serve the clients, that we serve. So there's definitely a bent from, that's culturally born for us to be interested in launching technologies that really communicate or convey that human touch. So it's something we're even calling, instead of fintech, touch tech. Think of a technology that may be helping people check in at a doctor's office, and they're checking in faster and better and easier. Maybe that's something that would be leverageable. From the way we're evolving how we serve our clients. Think of the chat AI and all the things that we all deal with on a daily basis. Either it feels like it doesn't work very well, or it feels like a great answer that's more efficient and still very human. So we're leaning into a lot of those things, and trying to ensure that as we press forward, we know who we are. Our clients still feel we are who we've always been, which is a company that cares and stands for better. And so look forward to us leaning heavily into the technology focus to make sure we do that to match the needs of the next era.
Yeah, and buy lots of purple shirts, right? Um,
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for being on with us today. I know there's been some good conversation going on in the chat and the Slack channel. So I'll remind everyone listening and tuning in that we do have a Slack channel that you can communicate on. If you have questions and keep the conversation going, there's obviously a chat. But as you figured out by now, the chat in the session kind of ends with the session. That's also why the Slack group is great to be able to keep that going on. Continue to do all your networking umbrella. Continue to tune in the sessions as we talked about. And hopefully you're getting lots of good meetings requests. We have a lot more for you in the afternoon, but we have a little bit of time if you haven't had a lunch break yet. And then we'll see you all in just a bit. So thank you all for tuning in, and we got a lot more to come.